Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Wake Up Heavy is a Weirding Way media podcast.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, the world's greatest horror movie podcast. In this episode, my weird dad will be talking about...
Conveniently located off the main road is Ida and Vincent's Motel.
You want us to register?
No, that won't be necessary.
You'll never forget Ida's cooking, Farmer Vincent's prompt and courteous service, and ask to see their secret garden. You just might die laughing. Motel Hell, rated R.
Hello and welcome to Wake Up Heavy. This is Mark Bagley, your host. It is time for a new Why Didn't I Rent This? It's been quite some time since I did one of these. I have been looking for movies to do on this series because I enjoy doing it. I like the new to me discoveries that it presents, and I've been racking my brain for a Why Didn't I Rent This episode and hoping that some old movie that I bypassed in the VHS days would grab hold and sink its teeth into me and make me think, boy, you really would have liked this as a kid. And it hasn't really happened. I have been actively looking for something for a couple of months as I slowly work my way into doing regular episodes again. Nothing's really hit. I scroll through Xfinity's horror section. I look on streaming services. I look on Just Watch. And maybe it's just that I'm running out of movies that I remember seeing in the video store. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, this movie, Motel Hell, from 1980, directed by Kevin Connor, has also been rattling around in my brain for about 3 months. And not in relation to Why Didn't I Rent This? Because I had absolutely no intention of doing an episode on this movie. And that's because, as I'm sure I've mentioned in the past, I know I have, I'll get to that in a second, I don't particularly care for this film. Now, I did do a rewatch of this almost exactly 3 years ago, like October 15th, 2020, according to my Letterboxd account, because of an episode of The Projection Booth. They did an episode for October, Spooktober, whatever they call it over there, Shocktober, I think. It was a really interesting episode, got a lot of background information on the film that made me think, hey, you should reassess this. Rewatched it, enjoyed it a little bit more with that knowledge, still didn't really care for it all that much. And I talked about that on an episode back then, that whole reassessment thing, that whole rewatching deal. I haven't watched it since. For whatever reason, it's been popping back into my head. just as a rewatch idea. The other thing that's been going on since starting Cambridge and with Sean, my other show, is diving back into childhood memories. This film holds a strong childhood memory for me, even though I didn't see the movie back then, that is connected, at least in my head, with another very strong childhood memory of something that I was obsessed with back then. Another thing I'll get into shortly. I mentioned on the last episode, the September 2023 watch list episode, that I was hoping to do something on Der Fan, and am definitely doing something on the movie Parents with Cristachio. Now, both of those movies and this one deal with the same topic in wildly different ways. Der Fan is, by no stretch of the imagination, now that I'm saying that, it could be viewed as a very, very, very dark, black comedy in a way, but it's really not played for laughs. Parents, though, is definitely a black comedy, as is, according to the director of Motel Hell, this one. Done very differently, and in my head, one of them is way more successful at it than the other. Cannibalism. Ain't it funny? So I had that recognition pop into my head. What is it about cannibal movies that is making them bounce around in your head right now? And I don't have an answer for that. But as I mentioned, this has a very strong memory for me that is connected to another one that I think happened on the same day, but it's very possible that they didn't. The timeline of both of these kind of makes sense to me. So Motel Hell was released in 1980. Devo's Freedom of Choice album was also released in 1980. Now, back then, my dad had a nursery business as a side hustle. My sister and I and my mom were all roped in to helping with this. Part of the business, part of the growing aspect of it was done out on my grandparents' property in Visalia. They had a couple acres of land, and so a lot of the plants were out there. We would go pretty much every weekend and weed the plants there. So on this particular day, I believe I was stung by a wasp. My grandma tended to it, put baking soda or whatever they used to do back then, and I got a little respite from working out in the nursery, and the TV was on. I remember seeing a clip of a Devo video, had no idea what the song was, or if it was even a song playing. I feel like it was a preview for a show saying, hey, this is what's coming up next. It was a really bizarre image of them, which I later found out was from the Freedom of Choice video, where they're in these weird costumes, these weird get-ups. And the only reason I knew it was Devo is because it was spelled out on these things that they were wearing. I was into Devo at that point, or getting into, or intrigued by them. I thought, oh, I need to stay in here and watch this. I need to see what this is. And in my brain, the next commercial was a TV spot from Motel Hell that absolutely freaked me out. I know that I didn't get to see the Devo video, so I don't know if I got sent back out to continue working, or if my grandparents came in and changed the channel, or what happened. It took me years to find out that that was the Freedom of Choice video. That's a story that'll end up on Cambridge and Sean at some point. I don't know if I ever saw another Motel Hell commercial or not, but I wanted nothing to do with that film after that. However, I don't think that's the reason I never rented this back then. Although, as I was preparing to do this, I figured that was why. But apparently, it wasn't released on VHS until 1986. By that time, I had been watching horror movies for at least 4 years, pretty regularly. Not much freaked me out. There's not much I would shy away from renting. other than something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or I Spit on Your Grave or those things that looked too realistic. I think it's just something I probably missed as I was moving on to watching other stuff besides horror. I don't even really recall seeing this video in a video store. Never rented it. Finally watched it, I don't know how many years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. Did nothing for me. Rewatched it because of the projection booth. I hadn't really thought about it until recently. It's still not a movie that I particularly care for, which is odd for me to be talking about, because that's not really what I get into on Wake Up Heavy. It's usually stuff that I've loved since I was a kid, or for this series, it's things that I passed on, rediscovered, and really liked and think, oh, I would have liked this as a kid. I can't really say this about this movie, although who knows? Maybe I would have watched it back then and really liked it, and it would be one of those fond memories for me today of something weird whose tone was odd, because I do kind of like movies like that, like Dead and Buried. But I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's more akin to Return of the Living Dead or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where that weird tone just doesn't quite work for me for whatever reason. However, a lot of what makes it strange to me, in not such a great way these days, is still what I find fascinating about it and what I want to get into on this episode. Apparently, this was originally going to be directed by Tobe Hooper, which makes a lot of sense. I think it shares a lot of similarities with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which came quite a bit after this, as well as his film Eaten Alive, which came 4 years prior. Almost more with that movie, actually, because it takes place in a motel, has a strange proprietor who kills off the people that come to his motel. I want to say there's a weird kinky couple in both, but I may just be conflating the two. There definitely is in Motel Hell. And they both share a very strange feel that doesn't quite hit for me. The similarities for Texas Chainsaw Massacre are maybe a little bit more surface level. Of course, the cannibalism is one. There is a dueling chainsaw scene in both. I don't know if Tobe Hooper kind of ported that over from his experience with this film or not. Who's to say? It is kind of an interesting coincidence, though, if nothing else. But apparently the script for this was much darker and weirder and included bestiality and some other things that the studios really balked at. And when Kevin Connor came on, and he came on because the writers, who are also the producers, liked his work on the Amicus anthology film From Beyond the Grave, he insisted that it be shot as a black comedy, much the same way as Slumber Party Massacre, which started out as a parody but was shot straight. The darkness and weirdness of the original script still pokes its head through, and those are the threads that make the movie intriguing for me. So there is no hint of bestiality in the movie, but I'm curious if incest wasn't another dark aspect of that original script, because the relationship between Vincent and Ida Smith, played by Rory Calhoun.
Smithers, look, he's standing up. I've never seen anything so adorable. You know who it reminds me of?
Benji?
No.
Lassie?
No. A person. You know who I mean.
Snoop Doggy Dogg? Bob Barker? David Brenner?
No. The person who's always standing and walking.
Rory Calhoun?
That's it.
And Nancy Parsons are supposed to be siblings, and they don't feel like siblings. Part of it is their age discrepancy, and although it's not mentioned in the film, Calhoun was in his late 50s, and I believe that Nancy Parsons was only in her late 30s. I mean, there are plenty of families that have children that far apart. My mom was in a family with 9 kids and was way younger. She was the youngest of the 9, so the oldest was, I'm assuming, right around that age difference from her. But they don't act like siblings. A lot of what Ida does is spawned by jealousy of this girl, Terry, who is captured during one of Vincent's expeditions out to find fodder for the meat that he makes, to put it mildly. And there's another brother, Bruce, played by Paul Link, who is probably closer in age to Nancy Parsons. But again, they just don't feel like a family. They don't feel like siblings to me. It's very strange, particularly because none of them look alike, which is fine. I mean, that's movies. You got to suspend your disbelief for stuff like that. But if they didn't talk about being siblings, if they didn't talk about their childhood growing up, I would just think that these were people from the same town, that Vincent and Ida were father and daughter or something else other than siblings, that Bruce was completely unrelated to them. So that's one of the weird things that doesn't quite gel.
You see, if it doesn't gel, it isn't aspic, and this ain't gelling.
It reflects on maybe this was presented, these relationships were presented differently in this darker script. And as I've alluded to, the premise of the film is that Vincent and Ida run a motel in a remote area, but Vincent is also the proprietor of Farmer Vincent's smoked meats, which are apparently wildly popular, makes the motel a destination spot for people. And I think this is kind of a play on Farmer John, which I'm surprised they didn't get in trouble for. Of course, the motel is more a front for luring in unsuspecting tourists to become the source for his smoked meats, along with unfortunate tourists who end up being fodder for the mill, grist for the mill. Farmer Vincent regularly patrols the back roads near the motel to trap passers-by. And there are 2 particular groups of people, some punk rockers that include John Ratzenberger in an early role, not his earliest role. He had quite a few film roles under his belt.
You bet it all. Cliff, why would you do something like that?
It's because I knew that those people had never been in my kitchen.
And some models who are going skiing somewhere, apparently. The punk rockers are run off the road with bear traps, and the models are waylaid by some cow cutouts that Farmer Vincent puts on the road. A lot of these are over elaborate things that he does to catch victims. And then one of them is the food inspector that stops by early in the film, who later discovers the secret garden that Farmer Vincent has. And that secret garden is the thing that freaked me out when I saw this commercial on TV. So as I was looking on YouTube for TV spots for the film, there were quite a few on there, and there was only one that really showed this scene of the garden and these bags. And under the bags are the heads of the victims. Just that visual alone really creeped me out, but it was the noises, the gurgling that they make that really put the whammy on me. And it's that stuff, all of the scenes in the garden still really creep me out. And it just makes me wish that they had leaned into the creepiness harder. There's one other thing that's pretty disturbing in the film, but other than that, it's not even that the scenes are really played for laughs. It's just, I think the director didn't trust that the humor could come out of the dark material, so it had to be lightened a bit. Much of that comes from Nancy Parsons as Ida, which I am fine with for the most part, because Calhoun is a lot more serious. He comes off as I want to say stoic, but I don't think that's the word I'm searching for. A lot of it has to do with this strange morality that he has. Two of the early victims are Terry and Bo, who are traveling on a motorcycle that Vincent runs off the road. He takes Bo to the secret garden and buries him neck deep. They cut their vocal cords, that's the cause of the gurgling, and force feed these victims so that they fatten up for the smoking process. And instead of doing the same to Terry, he is smitten with her and takes her to the motel and nurses her back to health. So this weird relationship starts between them, even though she's way younger than him. And after an attempt by Ida to drown her, and Vincent saves her, she becomes smitten with him as well, tries to seduce him, and he says, no, we can't do that until we're married. Another aspect of this is his compassion, if I want to call it that, with the victims, in so much as when they are ready to be slaughtered, he hypnotizes them with this strange contraption and music so that they won't feel any pain when they basically break their necks, which is, again, another really creepy and horrific scene that I think could have had a lot more impact if played out in a darker way. And along with his compassion as he prepares to slaughter these innocent people, he tells Ida that he's concerned about the karmic implications of what it is that they do. And then his whole philosophy, once Terry finds out what's happening, shows this bizarre justification for using human meat.
There's too many people in the world, not enough food. Now, this takes care of both problems at the same time.
So along with the stuff in the secret garden, the other pretty disturbing aspect of the film is the smokehouse. And when Terry stumbles on it, there are pig carcasses throughout, and there's a back room that she almost gets into, but Ida stops her. And once we finally see what's in there, Farmer Vincent tests that meat. It's pretty gnarly, which again makes me just wish that it had been played less for laughs, although that scene doesn't really play for laughs, and more for maybe nervous chuckles. I think the dark comedy can come out just from the absurdity of the act itself, which Parents does a better job of, instead of putting too fine a point on it. I mentioned the punk rockers and John Ratzenberger. For some reason, the lead, I think the band is called Ivan and the Terribles. The lead, or the driver of the van, who I'm assuming is Ivan, is wearing this awful fake beard that looks like community theater costume beard for some reason. And I don't know if it's because he's supposed to look like Ivan the Terrible or something like that. Or maybe the guy was embarrassed to be in the movie and he wanted to disguise himself. I don't know, but it's absolutely ridiculous. And John Ratzenberger has no lines in the film. He's smoking a joint in the van at some point, and by the time he's captured, the rest of his dialogue is all gurgling. So during the film, Bruce, the younger brother of these two, who is the sheriff of the nearby town, becomes smitten with Terry as well. He takes her on a date to watch a movie at the drive-in from a distance with binoculars, and is surprised to find out that Terry and Vincent are going to get married, and tries to stop it. He thinks that Vincent has her there against her will, which she denies. He tells her that Vincent has syphilis of the brain, which I think he's just saying, but kind of makes sense when you think about the things that Vincent is doing. And this leads to the now famous or infamous chainsaw duel at the end, with Farmer Vincent wearing a pig mask and fighting in the smokehouse. This was made famous on an old issue of Fangoria, that picture of Farmer Vincent in that getup with the huge chainsaw. The chainsaw duel is done fairly decently. I think it could have been edited a little better to make it a tad more convincing. But Farmer Vincent, in effect, falls on his own blade and cuts his side open, which is about the most graphic this movie gets, and has just a brilliant last bit of dialogue.
I used preservatives.
While this is going on, Bo, Terry's previous boyfriend, gets out of the secret garden and sets free all of the other victims that are still there. They attack Ida, who ends up buried head first in the garden, which Terry and Bruce discover at the end of the film. Once Terry has found out about what Farmer Vincent is doing, she's horrified, wants nothing else to do with him. She almost gets sawed in half, but is saved at the last minute by Bruce. And hopefully they live happily ever after, or at the very least, Terry gets the hell out of there. Now here's something I haven't done in a while, and I was reminded of while I was fixing old episodes. Let's read the Psychotronic Encyclopedia film entry on this. Motel Hell, 1980, United Artists. Producers, screenwriters, Stephen C. and Robert Jaffe. Director, Kevin Connor. An unsuccessful major studio attempt at cannibal comedy. A cheerful Rory Calhoun stars as Farmer Vincent, whose exclusive sausages are sold from his out-of-the-way motel. Victims are planted in the ground up to their necks and force-fed. The plump people whose vocal cords have been slit are dug up and slaughtered. Nina Axelrod as a young woman who wants to marry the crazy old Calhoun. Playboy centerfold Roseanne Caton and a group of ridiculous punk rockers don't help much. With Nancy Parson, Porky's, Wolfman Jack, and a clip from The Monster That Challenged the World, from the director of all those British amicus Edgar Rice Burroughs adventures. Rated R. And it's Nancy Parsons, most well known for her role in Porky's. Yay, Bob Clark. And I gotta kind of agree with this, although I do think it's a pretty interesting watch and would recommend it. I've already mentioned Eaten Alive and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 as similar films in a way. I would also include American Gothic, which I believe I considered as a Why Didn't I Rent This a while back. Although there isn't cannibalism, it's another one of those stranded tourist type of films. And strangely enough, Eaten Alive stars Carolyn Jones, aka Morticia Adams, and American Gothic stars Yvonne DiCarlo, aka Lily Munster. The other thing that this reminds me of is Tourist Trap.
You're so pretty.
With the out-of-the-way locale. And this was shot in Southern California, I think as you go inland a bit. And Tourist Trap has that same topography as this does. And we all know how I feel about Tourist Trap. And then for cannibal comedies, we also have Microwave Massacre, Eating Raoul, Blood Diner, Spider Baby, Delicatessen, something that we watched as a family together recently, and Parents, which I keep mentioning. I would also include Deranged in that, even though the cannibalism in that is more implied than specific. But if you want to get your chuckles while watching people get eaten, there you go. You've got a whole 24-hour marathon, probably. That does it for Volume 5, Episode 1 of Why Didn't I Rent This on Motel Hell. We may just end up with a string of cannibal-related movies here with Durfan and Parents hopefully coming up soon. So just in time for Thanksgiving, I guess, and you can ponder what's on your plate. All right, thank you so much for listening. Be safe, be smart, watch good movies, and don't forget.
Anything can happen when you wake up heavy.
You're eating out my heart and soul, babe. You're feasting on my better side. Whoever thought you'd be this way, girl? You never know what a pretty face can hide. I'm no fool to love and lie again. I thought that I would always trust you. The love from you I'd always feel. But now I know that I was used, girl. That all you wanted was a meal. You're eating out my heart and soul, babe. You're feasting on my better side. Whoever thought you'd be this way, girl? You never know what a pretty face can hide.
Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.